It all started when I was about to turn 18, just when everything should have been falling into place. My father, who I'd always looked up to, made a choice that shattered my perception of family and love. I had been working hard to prepare for college, to build a future, and yet my father, the person who was supposed to support me, made a shocking decision. He chose to fund my cousin's education and career instead of mine. I still remember the day vividly. My cousin, Alex, had just graduated high school and was about to start college. Alex was the golden child of the family, always the favorite, always the one who got the attention. I had been there for Alex during tough times, offering advice and support when no one else would. But when my father sat me down and told me he was helping Alex financially, I was blindsided. I had worked so hard to get good grades, to get into a good college, but none of that seemed to matter. My dad told me that Alex had potential, that Alex needed help, and that I was fine on my own. He made it clear that my cousin's future mattered more than mine. The pain of hearing those words cut deeper than anything else. I was angry, confused, and hurt. How could my father do this to me after all the years I had supported and respected him? I had done everything right, followed the rules, worked hard for everything I had, but it wasn't enough. My dad's decision felt like a direct message to me that I wasn't enough, that I wasn't worthy of his support or love. The betrayal hit me in a way I couldn't even describe. I spent days questioning everything about my life, wondering if I was just a shadow in the family, overshadowed by my cousin's accomplishments. And as for my dad, I was left with the feeling that he had chosen Alex over me, without even considering my dreams, my plans, or my future. It was in that moment that the cracks in my relationship with him began to grow wider. I had always assumed that my father would be there for me, that he would support my ambitions. But that moment revealed to me a harsh truth. My father's love was conditional, and my achievements were never going to be enough to earn his approval. This decision would affect our relationship for years to come. My family, of course, didn't understand why I was so upset. To them, it was a practical decision. Alex needed the help more than I did. But they didn't know the pain I was feeling, the disappointment in my heart. To them, it might have seemed like a minor choice, but to me, it was a defining moment. It was the moment I realized that I couldn't rely on anyone but myself to get where I wanted to go. From that point on, I made a vow to never let anyone, especially my father, hold me back again. Looking back on my childhood, I can see the signs of favoritism toward my cousin even when we were kids. My father was always the type to spoil Alex, buying him the latest gadgets, funding his hobbies, and constantly praising him for every little achievement. It didn't matter if I was working hard to excel in school or sports. My cousin seemed to have my father's full attention. It always felt like I had to compete for a sliver of his approval, while Alex effortlessly received it. In every family gathering, Alex was always the center of attention. Whether it was a birthday party, a graduation, or a simple family dinner, my father's eyes were always on Alex. I could see the admiration in his eyes, the pride that seemed to shine brighter every time Alex did something, even if it was just something simple like scoring a goal in a game or bringing home an A in math. Meanwhile, I was working twice as hard, studying late into the night, striving to be the best at everything I did, but it never seemed to be enough. I always felt like I was living in Alex's shadow, competing not just with my cousin, but with the image of perfection that my dad had built for him. Even when I got accolades for my achievements, my dad would often downplay them, saying, "It's expected of you." But with Alex, every achievement was met with exuberance, praise, and promises of support. It wasn't just the big moments that were overshadowed. Little things, like who would get to spend time with Dad on the weekends, or who would get the special gift at Christmas, seemed to always go to Alex. This was the backdrop of my childhood. I was constantly overshadowed by my cousin, and I had learned to accept it, even though it always stung. There were times I tried to speak up about it, tried to express my frustration, but I was dismissed. "You're just being sensitive," my father would say. "Alex needs this more than you." It was as if I wasn't allowed to have feelings. It became clear over the years that my dad thought Alex was the one who needed the most help, whether it was financially or emotionally, while I was expected to take care of myself. Looking back now, I realize how unhealthy that environment was. I had always been the quiet one, the one who didn't ask for much, the one who didn't need the attention. But I wasn't invisible, and I didn't deserve to be treated as if I was. My father's favoritism toward Alex made me feel like I was constantly fighting for scraps of affection. It made me question my own worth, and it led to a growing resentment that I tried to bury for years. When my dad decided to fund Alex's future, while leaving me to fend for myself, it was the culmination of years of favoritism. It felt like a slap in the face, a confirmation of everything I had felt growing up. Alex had always been my father's favorite, and nothing was going to change that. But this time, it wasn't just about childhood jealousy. It was about the future. I had worked hard, done everything right, and yet it didn't matter. The favoritism had grown into something much more significant, and I was left with nothing but the bitter taste of betrayal. The decision to fund Alex's future came completely out of nowhere. One day, my father sat me down and told me that he had decided to pay for Alex's college tuition. I was speechless. I thought I had misunderstood, but the more he spoke, the more the reality set in. Alex is really struggling, my father explained, and I think he's going to need help. You're fine. You don't need my financial support. I could barely hear him over the sound of my heart breaking. For years, I had been told that I could always count on my dad, that he would support me no matter what. But suddenly, I found myself standing alone, left to make sense of everything on my own. My father's explanation seemed so cold, so detached. He didn't even try to explain why Alex was more deserving than me. He didn't even acknowledge my achievements or the sacrifices I had made to get to where I was. I had always believed that hard work would pay off. I had always thought that if I did everything right, my father would be proud of me and he would support my dreams. But that day, I realized that it wasn't about hard work. It was about who you were in my father's eyes. And I wasn't the one who needed the most help. The betrayal I felt was suffocating. It was as if my years of dedication, my future, my dreams, all of it meant nothing to him. It wasn't just the financial support that hurt. It was the fact that my father had made it clear that my dreams didn't matter. He had turned his back on me in favor of someone who had never had to fight for anything. I had already been struggling to make ends meet, trying to secure scholarships, working part-time jobs, and doing everything I could to make my college dreams a reality. But now, with my father funding my cousin's future, it seemed impossible. It felt like he had closed the door on me and handed the key to Alex. How could he not see how much I needed his support, just as much as Alex did? I tried to stay calm, tried to reason with him, but I knew deep down that nothing would change. My father had made his choice. Alex was the one who needed the help, and I was just supposed to accept it. But I couldn't. I couldn't accept being treated like I didn't matter, like my dreams were irrelevant. This decision destroyed me, and it set the stage for everything that happened after. The decision to fund Alex's future didn't just break my heart, it completely altered the course of my life. I suddenly found myself drowning in financial stress. I had already been struggling to afford college, juggling multiple jobs just to pay for textbooks and living expenses. My father's refusal to support me made it that much harder. Without his help, I was left with a mountain of debt and a future that seemed increasingly out of reach. But it wasn't just about money. The emotional toll of this betrayal was far worse. My father's choice felt like a punch in the gut every day. It was a reminder that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't worth investing in. Alex had always been the favorite, but now it felt like my father had officially written me off. At first, I tried to push through. I worked harder, took on more shifts, and found new ways to make ends meet. I was determined not to let my father's decision define me, but no matter how hard I worked, the bitterness lingered. It was hard to focus on my studies when my mind kept drifting back to that conversation, to the realization that I had been left to fight for everything on my own, while my cousin was getting all the help he needed. I couldn't help but feel resentful. How was I supposed to succeed without the support I needed? How could I move forward when my father had made it clear that I wasn't a priority? But somehow, I found the strength to keep going. I decided that if my father wouldn't help me, I would help myself. I started networking, applying for scholarships, and doing whatever I could to make a future for myself. I refused to let my father's choice determine my fate. As the years passed, my father's decision began to haunt him. Alex had used his financial support, but nothing had turned out the way my father had hoped. Alex dropped out of college, unable to handle the pressure, and struggled to find stable work. He had squandered the opportunities my father had given him. Meanwhile, I was building my own life, brick by brick. I finished college on my own, without any financial help, and secured a job that allowed me to finally start my career. Despite everything, I had succeeded. My father began to reach out to me, asking if I would help Alex, offering to make amends for the mistakes he had made. But I couldn't help him. I had moved on. I had built my life from the ground up, and I wasn't about to let my father use me to fix his mistakes. Karma had a way of showing its face, and I watched as my father regretted his decision. The money he had spent on Alex's education was gone, and he was left with nothing. The truth was clear. He had chosen wrong. Karma had its way of balancing the scales, and as time passed, my father's regret became evident. He had sacrificed so much of his resources to fund Alex's future, only to watch it crumble. Alex, despite all the help, had dropped out of college, unable to cope with the pressures. He bounced from job to job, never finding his footing. It seemed that no matter how much my father tried to help, Alex's path was destined to be full of struggle and missteps. It wasn't just the financial loss. It was the realization that he had poured so much into someone who didn't value it. On the other hand, my life was moving forward. I had worked tirelessly to build my own future, even without the safety net that Alex had been given. I finished college on my own, juggling multiple jobs and scholarships to make ends meet. I earned my degree with pride, knowing that every accomplishment was earned through my own sweat and determination. When I landed my first real job, the one I had worked toward for so long, it felt like a victory over everything that had happened. I had succeeded, not because of my father's money, but because I was capable. I didn't need anyone to validate me. My independence had become my strength, and it was that strength that allowed me to thrive even when the people I thought I could count on had let me down. My father began to reach out to me more frequently. He asked for help with Alex, trying to make amends for the decisions he had made. It was clear he had realized that his blind favoritism had not only harmed Alex, but it also damaged our relationship beyond repair. But by then, I had already moved on. I was no longer the person who needed his approval or his help. I had created my own life, and I wasn't about to allow him to pull me back into the cycle of disappointment. At first, I was angry. He had never apologized, at least not in a way that made me feel like he truly understood the hurt he caused. Instead, he seemed to want me to forgive him because it was convenient for him, but I wasn't ready to just let it go. His decision had changed everything in my life, and it had been hard to build the life I had without the support I thought I'd receive. My father had hurt me, and though I had found my own way, the emotional scars weren't something I could easily forget. Eventually, I decided that I had to let go of the anger. I had already forgiven him in my heart, mostly because holding on to the bitterness wasn't helping me anymore. But I knew I couldn't just jump back into a relationship where he expected me to fix everything for him, especially after everything he had done. He was in a place of regret, but that didn't mean I had to help him repair the damage. Instead, I focused on continuing my own journey. I had worked hard to get where I was, and I wasn't going to let my father's mistakes or Alex's failure derail my progress. Watching my father struggle with the consequences of his decisions was painful, but it was also a reminder that I had made the right choices for myself. Sometimes, the best way to show people that they were wrong is by proving them wrong through your own actions. As for my father, I don't know if he ever fully understood the depth of what he had done. He never fully acknowledged the pain he caused by choosing Alex over me. But I had reached a point where it didn't matter anymore. I had built my own life, on my own terms, and that was all I needed to move forward. The future was mine to create, and no one, especially not my father, could take that away from me. In the end, I realized that the best revenge wasn't success or proving my father wrong. It was simply living my life on my own terms. While my father and cousin faced the consequences of their choices, I had built something for myself. I no longer needed validation or approval from anyone. My strength, my independence, and my hard work were my greatest achievements. The journey wasn't easy, but I had come out stronger. My father's regret was his burden to bear, not mine. And as I continued to move forward, I knew the future was mine to create, unbroken, fulfilled, and free. Thank you for watching, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do so and press the notification bell. This way, you'll stay updated with more shocking real-life stories.